Woohoo! All right, so where do I begin? I'm Mark VanNess. I own VanNess and Fellows Tattoo. Ink's been a part of my life since the dawn of time that I can remember. I own VanNess and Fellows Tattoo. It's here in Raleigh. It's a small kind of more private studio. For those of you don't know what a normal tattoo shop's like, mine's a little bit different. I only create one-off custom tattooing. We don't really get a chance to do like simple stuff, so that's the basis of what I do. I'm a professional tattooer and painter. This is some of my work just to help you understand what I was jibber-jabbing about. Excuse me if I'm like acting nervous or whatever. This is some tattoos I've done, to help relate to this matter of ink. Ink for me has been like an exploration for my life. It's allowed me to connect to people, and it's allowed me to experience life. It's always been a drive since I was a kid to be able to express myself and to be able to work out problems, or just to be able to, have an adventure. These are watercolor paintings that I make out of ink, usually, for some reason or another. So let's get past all this. This is, my work. What I really wanted to come and talk to you about, and this is a watercolor paint of my wife, Jess, that I made. So not only do I make like artwork for what I do for a living, I also make it to, capture something that means something to me, which is very similar in what I do as tattooing. I try to mark a moment in time that's important to me and put it down on paper when I'm creating artwork. When I'm making a tattoo, I generally am like taking someone's ideas and applying it to their body. So this is as far as I can go with showing you my work. Since I've been really young, my grandfather gave me a really good piece of advice when I was young. He told me there's two kinds of people in this world. There's ones that use their head, and there's ones that use their hands. And the sooner you can figure that out, the better off you'll be. I left home at a very young age of 14. I quit school, I quit, everything just so I could like build houses and, screw off like a lot of people do at that time. And I did that so long that basically what happened to me is that kept chanting in my head, and I had to figure out something to do with my life. I had to find something I was passionate about. And at a very young age, like tattoos were always one of those things that fascinated me for some reason. So naturally at 20, after being on my own for 6 years, I worked really hard to try to get an apprenticeship. In order to get an apprenticeship, you pretty much have to like show drawings to a place, and you have to meet people and really push what you have to offer in hopes that they'll give you that job. Little did I know what that was entailing. It was pretty much, it's basically like you're gonna work for free for a year to learn how to tattoo and not get paid and bust your butt for it. But how do you do that? How do you work for free for a year to learn something? Well, it's much like basically having a chance to go to school. Like you go to school, you get your education, you're a student, you might have a part-time job, but somehow or another you figure out how to go to school and do it. I had to figure that out. I had to basically work 40 hours a week building houses, and then I had to work 40 hours a week learning how to tattoo. It was a long process, and I had no clue what that was going to do to me. I had no clue that like jumping into that world, that this is where I would be at. And I'm really grateful for that. I mean, this is amazing. With that being said, I learned how to tattoo. The shop that I worked at really shortly afterwards closed down. And I had this opportunity finally to learn how to tattoo, but I basically didn't have a place to do it. I think probably for me, everybody's gone at some point in time in their life where they've had an opportunity to learn something, you get excited about it, and then you have to figure out how to continue to do that. And you can't let something just like knock you down and go, okay, well, I'm done with it, and just move on. You basically have to, I think, go after it. You have to find a way. And what happened to me is basically I ended up losing my place of business, and shortly after that, I ended up losing the place where I lived as well. And being down and out, I remember just being like so bummed about it and just being like so lost and torn about it. Just like I was like, I had this taste of learning how to tattoo. I wanted it so bad, but I didn't have anywhere where I could go. I had minimal experience. I had minimal like skills at that time. Luckily enough for me, I had a friend that was coming through town named Johnny, and he showed up, and he was heading west to go to San Francisco with his girlfriend. And I remember, telling him where I was at, and he was just like, "You gotta, go with me. You know how to build houses at least. You know how to make tattoos. Like, what are you even doing here anymore? Like, why don't you just jump on with me?" And I was like, "That's crazy. This is crazy to think like I'm gonna leave where I'm at and like go somewhere else. I have like no money, how am I gonna do this?" But that fear that you get, it basically is what either makes you better or worse. Fear will lock into you and suffocate you. Or it'll allow you to just say the hell with it and move on. I chose to leave. I had $500 in my pocket, a dog, my tattoo gear, probably like a bag full of clothes, I think. And we drove south to Mobile, Alabama. And that fear was just still like riding on my shoulders. So it's just like, now I've left home, now I've left all my friends, I left all my comfort. And I remember telling them that I was like, I just need to get out here, like we're not getting along. And I was making up excuses in my head why I could get out of this car so I could go back home and find my comfort and not face my real fear. My fear was I was afraid of not knowing. And I think we could probably all relate to that. So I jumped out. And I ended up being with my uncle, who lived in Pensacola for a little bit. And I remember staying there and just asking him if I could hang out for like a couple of days. And he's like, "Yeah, hang out, get on your feet." And I basically was sitting there like, all right, cool. Like, what am I going to do and all this? And meanwhile, I'm in this really beautiful town that has white sand beaches, gorgeous, gorgeous beaches, a cool little downtown. It's the first time I'd ever been that far south in my life. And I realized I was on a military base, which military guys like getting tattooed, obviously. So why would I go back home to where everything wasn't working out for me? Why wouldn't I just give this a shot? So thinking of that, I ended up like going and meeting a couple of shop owners and basically begging for a job. I at least needed just to work for a week or something like that, just so I could get enough money to get back home. And ended up staying there for the next 3 years of my life. It was amazing because I'd got that opportunity to do that. I'd gotten the chance to like get back into what I wanted to do. Why would I even leave this? And after 3 years of working there and like honing my skills, like getting super fast, getting solid, and creating something, good, I still had this like little part of me that was like, anytime that I had like a problem, I've usually tried to like face it, not run away from it. And for example, one of the things that I would do, this is how stupid I used to be. If I had a machine that I tattooed with, basically if it broke, I would just pull out another one. I didn't know the mechanics of it. I didn't know how to repair it. I didn't know how to keep it going because I didn't know everything about my industry. I didn't know everything about what I was doing. I just had the basics. It was basically like my high school, is moving to Pensacola and learn how to tattoo there. So I ended up thinking to myself, all right, man, this is stupid. This is costing me too much money to do this, just keep buying machines. So I should find someone that I think that I admire and look up to them and call them and see if I could like have a tutorial on how to build machines. So I called the best guy that I knew, and he was like really well known at the time. And I hit him up and he's like, hey man, like, I was like, I want to learn how to, build machines and work on them. And he was like, okay, well, I have a forum. This is in like 1999, by the way. I've been tattooing for 18 years. I don't know if I said that. This is in like 1999, and I didn't own a computer or anything like that. So I was, of course, first off, like, what the hell is a forum? And then I was like, what's the internet almost? That's how stupid I was. And he was like, I mean, you can basically just log onto a computer and learn, So I was like, yeah, but I'm a real like hands-on person. Like going back to what my grandfather said so long ago to me, like use your head or use your hands. The sooner you figure it out, the better off you'll be. I use my hands, so I'm that type of personality. Is like, I'm just going to drive up there tomorrow and meet you. Will you be there? He's like, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. You're in Pensacola, Florida. That's like 17 hours. I was like, yeah, it's no problem. No problem. I'm going to rent a car. I'll drive through the night. I'll be there. Just make sure you're there. And he's like, whatever, guy. So I've always been like a very all or nothing personality. And my wife can attest to that. And I did that. I rented a car and I drove all the way through the night. I slept in front of his shop, funny enough. And then he got there, was looking at me really strange because I look like a maniac. I'm sleeping in a convertible car with the top down in downtown Baltimore, like the seediest side. And so he, gave me a really awesome, like quick 30, 40-minute tutorial on how to do it. And it was really valuable to me. But the biggest thing about that whole thing wasn't what I was learning. It wasn't what I thought I was learning. I thought I was learning how to work on machines. What I was really learning is with myself is to take risk, to go after something like you're mad at it. It was the first time that I thought in my life that, like, here's somebody that I idolize, that I look up to, and all I had to do is call him up and make an appointment, and I got to meet him. And that's what's fascinating about what I do, because let's face it, if any of you ever wanted to make an appointment with somebody that you look up to in your industry or something that you want to do, let's say like Valentino Rossi, Stevie Nicks, Quentin Tarantino, this is like impossible. And what I'm fortunate in my industry is it's just calling someone up and making an appointment. It's just calling someone up and saying, I want to get a tattoo by you so I can learn something from you. And that's what I learned at that time is like, I got this like sickness almost in a way in my mind to keep challenging myself, to keep going after more. So naturally, with my all or nothing personality, I ended up heading back to Pensacola, Florida, and try to make a game plan in my head on how could I get better at what I was doing other than just banging out, military tattoos. And I was like, all right, well, what can I do? And I was like, I should have some type of exposure, because what I want to do is I want to travel to the people that I look up the most. So I really worked as hard as I probably could at that time, which was about 75 hours a week tattooing and saving up money and contacting magazines and stuff like that, and just trying to get as much exposure with my work as possible. So they would give me like a little bit more leadway. It probably helped me a little bit. I think what helped me the most though is, I didn't realize at that time, is that I was just a maniac. I wanted to work as much as possible. I wanted to work 15-hour days. Like, I was consumed by it. I couldn't just put it down for 4 days and walk away from it. I never had days off. I never wanted them, because what I did is what I loved doing. So it wasn't even like working. It was like just living which is amazing. I ended up contacting my idols once again out in California to make an appointment, like what I was trying to explain. And these guys said, yeah, come on out, get tattooed. And that's all they knew that I was doing. They didn't know that I had this plan, this game plan. And I flew out there and I met this guy, Paco Excel. And he was, tattooing me, and he was telling me about how he just had this article in a magazine. And it was about him traveling across the USA and tattooing with people that he looked up to. And I was just like, eureka. Like, hey, dude, I just did the same thing. Unfortunately, it wasn't in like a good a publication that he was in and all that. It was in a much lesser form. And I explained to him, it's like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to have that same experience. I feel like that's the only way that I learn is like to go and like be around other people. If I just stay where I'm at and I get stagnant, I basically, you lose that momentum, that you have going for you, that drive. And right as I was getting ready to leave for that appointment, he basically told me, he's like, well, your work's, good enough. I showed him my book, my portfolio of work. He critiqued it. He told me that everything looked really great in it, and he said that I was a really nice guy. And he's like, should you find yourself on the West Coast, you got a spot to work at for a little bit. And that to me was like, cool. Like, I don't even need to do all the other stuff. I just need to like beeline it, So I went straight back and I sold everything that I owned in probably about 24 hours. And I basically told everybody, like, I have to go. Like, right now I have this energy that's inside of me that's bundling to get out. And, I just went for it. The funniest thing about this, I have to clip through some of these slides because I prepared to say something else, but this has gone totally different. So, a customer told me recently a really good, awesome analogy for the way that I was feeling at this moment. Is what he said to me is, jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down. Face your fear, give in to risk, who cares? Take a chance, enjoy your life. And I thought that was amazing. So, real quick, I decided to jump out of an airplane. I basically sold everything that I owned, and I took off as fast as I could, and I went out there. And what was amazing at that time that I didn't realize is that I was fortunate enough to be in that spot, that unique time. These guys were basically on the cutting edge of what was to be a standard in today's tattoo industry and beyond. Like everybody, these guys that I went to just really guest spot. And to explain this, I didn't go there and like all of a sudden it's like, cool, you're doing your thing and you're like amazing. No, I went there and I was getting their little table scraps, but I was lucky enough to be getting knowledge with that. And what these guys were doing was, sorry, a little dry. They were doing watercolor paintings to create bodysuits. For those of you who don't know what a bodysuit is, it's when you get your whole entire back and butt and thighs tattooed. It sounds completely horrible, and it is. It's a really huge commitment. We're talking hours of pain, money, time, intimacy with someone else that you don't really know. You're giving it all. These guys wanted to do this type of tattooing. They had never done it before. In order to do it, it's what they decided to do is make paintings and create them to look like bodysuits using watercolor ink and get that exposure. What they were doing is what I was doing at the same time, just on a much grander scale. They were setting goals to obtain something, to get there. And they were doing it with like no regards to whether or not people were worried about what they were doing. So they made these books. I'm going to give you a picture so you understand what I'm talking about. This was the first book that they made in 2000 when I arrived. And these are the paintings that they're creating. So you can see the way that the back outlines and the body. They're making works of art though. This isn't like sailor tattoos. This is like trying to tell a story for them. Because they did this notarized them as the people that this is the kind of work that they did. And what that did to me was like, okay, set higher goals, keep going after things, keep trying to hone your skills and try to get to the next level that you want to be at. And I worked my ass off. I just painted all the time and I worked all the time. And the exposure that I was having at that time with them and the knowledge I was gaining, I wasn't really, I don't know how to say it, like I wasn't really understanding what I was getting. At the time, I just thought that I was, learning how to tattoo better. But really what I was getting was more of that taste of like having to take risk, having to think outside your box, having to challenge yourself and go after your goals, because you'll probably succeed if you work really hard at them. I worked there for a couple of years, 2 years, and then fortunately after working there for that long, I didn't make it. I failed. Financially, I was completely broke, and I was really defeated after like 2 years of that, and I had to come home. And coming home is a really hard thing sometimes when you get this drive to go do something with your life that's really special, and you end up going and going after and going after and going after it, and then all of a sudden it stops. You feel defeated, I didn't realize that all that I've been collecting in those 5 years of like traveling around and being there, that what I was coming into later on with my life coming back home. And I ended up basically coming back to Raleigh, North Carolina, and getting a job with a tattoo shop here in town called Blue Flame Tattoo. They were the only people at that time that did really quality tattooing, and I didn't want to be digressing in my life, so that was natural sense. I ended up going there and thinking to myself, man, this sucks. I'm at home, this is horrible, like making money and all that, but like I gotta get back to California, I gotta get there, I gotta do this. I gotta get back to these people that I look up to. And that's when my wife walked in and I met her. She's been a great inspiration for my life as well. And I didn't think that I was going to be meeting my wife or the mother of my son at that time. And I decided to start hanging out with her. I stayed, yeah. Sorry, still trying to get it out there. But what happened with her, like I had this, this vision of being, back in California. I met her and I decided to stay. And I decided to like start making stupid little challenges to her. 2 weeks after I met her, I decided to go to Costa Rica and backpack for a month. And I invited her to join me, and she said yes for some reason. This was the first time that I'd ever traveled internationally. And it's very similar to whenever the first time that I traveled to Pensacola, Florida to learn how to tattoo and hone my skills, like step out of my comfort zone. While we were there, we ended up talking about traveling. She had this dream to like travel the world for like a year. I was like, oh yeah, of course, like that sounds really cool to do that, but probably never going to happen. And a couple years later, we were still together. Luckily enough, she put up with me, and we started really actually talking more serious about this. And I started having this slight fear kicking into me again. I had this feeling of like, oh my God, I'm going to give up my job now that I'm really comfortable at. Everybody likes me. I'm doing quality tattooing, and I'm going to give this up to go traveling. There's no way that we're going to do this, blah, blah. And, we hung out and we started, trying to make our progress towards that. And I just kept working and going to the grind and all that. What started happening with me during that time, though, is that I'd lost all that inspiration of wanting to be the best at what I wanted to do. I started getting very stagnant. I started getting really lost in what I was doing. And it was pretty much at that time that I decided, she's right. Like, I'm just being the same person over and over again here. I'm not learning anything. I'm not experiencing anything. And I think that that's what kind of separates creative people or inspired people, is whether or not you have challenges. We ended up saving our money for like 7 years and selling everything and going on this trip around the world for a year. And it was amazing. We saw 17 countries, or 24 countries in 17 months. We saw 6 continents out of 7. And I tattooed in 6 or 7 countries while I was tattooing. And I got that recharge that I needed, that I'd had before in San Francisco and that I'd had it before in Pensacola, Florida. Like, I had this sense of like learning from other people and what they do, the way that they do it, and I got inspired to, again, to create because I'd been so stagnant for so long. I think that that's the way that I can relate all of this. I know that this went all over the place, but ink, what it has done to me in my entire life, has allowed me to meet people and take their ideas and put them on their bodies. Like, that's what's amazing about doing ink, is it's like wearing a journal on your body. There's a permanence to it, but there's not really that much of a permanence. Basically, with tattooing, it fades over time. But what ink's basically done to me my entire life, it's allowed me to like move forward in other adventures. It's allowed me to give a creative avenue to where I want to be at. It's allowed me to make a living somewhat of an artist and somewhat as a technician. Like, there is no definitive part of it other than that to me. I think that's all I can say right now, is that ink's it's been a driving force for me. It's allowed me to meet people and mark them, and I take that very seriously. Questions? Sorry. Probably the best part about it is whenever you meet a client, you're usually sitting down and hearing something that they want on them for the rest of their life. So I can't really relate one immediately right now in my head, but someone, let's say they have a dog that means something, to them, that they have like a passing of something. Well, actually, I can give you that, how I relate to it. It's all back to me now. That dog that I talked about earlier in the talk, my dog Lobo, I had him for 15 years. This dog traveled around the world, or the United States, with me this entire time. He was always like my best friend. He was always there. I had a client that came to me probably 4 years ago to tell me that their dog had passed, and how bummed they were, like how upset they were. I didn't have kids at the time when they told me this. So like, when I lost my dog, it was like one of the most horrific things that had happened. Like, it was really horrible. Like, I cried for like 4 days. I know I look like a tough tattoo guy and all that, but yeah, I definitely, sobbed for 4 days. And when this person came to me to tell me, the story about their dog, that they wanted to get tattooed on them, they got choked up a little bit in front of me. Then I found myself, it making me reflect on my own life. And I just basically, try to help them understand, like, we've all been there, like losing animals, like one of the toughest things, and like what they're doing, is awesome. It's amazing. You're getting a dog, your animal that you love forever. The coolest thing about, I think, the story of it is that the guy's dog was basically his best friend, just like mine, and like it was another guy explaining to me how much he loved this animal, and seeing him like break down in front of me was really special, and I think that that's what I mean about the connection of it. It's like, like when I order a cup of coffee, I'm not going to like tell someone like, oh yeah, by the way, my dog died last night, so if you can, start crying for me, and give me my latte at the same time. That doesn't happen, like in my studio, the way that it's set up, I decided to go a little bit different than most studios. It's a very private studio. It's in an old Victorian house. I've set it up in a house that it has like a comfortable environment. I think that if anybody, I know that few of you have been there, but if anybody ever has a chance to come by, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's, relaxing. I think that that's the first part of getting your tattoos. It has to be welcome and inviting. You're already freaked out coming in. You're like, I'm going to pay all this money. I'm going to get tattooed. It's going to be there forever, and I'm going to have to deal with pain, which is everybody's fear of it, most of the time. And that's all these, and then your artwork as well, coming into the shop, it's like it's all dizzy in your head. And for us, it's like natural, so it's like if they come in with their ideas, like 7 of them, we'll help you get it. That's where we come into play. And you have to, I think, be an inviting person to that person, that client, and let them express themselves. You have to take the time to let them let go for a second. And, that's the best part of it. Like I've tattooed people who have lost their kids, which is also one of those things. Like these are 2 morbid examples that I've given you so far. Not every tattoo is like, like a crying, bleeding heart story. I've met people that came in and got like something so simple as architectural drawing of their house. People that make like an accomplishment, is like another cool way of it. And I remember I had a client come to me, him and his wife, and they wanted to get the blueprint of their building, their house that they just bought together. This beautiful, creation of these 2 coming together. They bought a house, a home, and they wanted the diagram tattooed on them. And like, I knew exactly what they were feeling because I bought a house 7 years before this and fixed it up and sold it so I could go travel the world. Like it was, there's so many different ways to relate it. Sorry, did that answer it or not? No. By the way, I have like serious crazy ADD. Like I rant, I rave, I go off in like different avenues. It might come back, it might not. So if it doesn't clear, let me know and all that. In the beginning of tattooing, of course, I think like everybody, like at the beginning of anything you do, you get, worries and all that stuff. But I kind of approached it in the beginning. This is going to sound really horrible. I kind of looked at it like, I'm going to make mistakes, so what does it matter? Like, you have to make mistakes to get better, so accept it. Like, if you keep fighting that, you're just going to stay in that period of time. Nowadays, it's not as hard for me because A, I've been doing it for 18 years, but B, I'm just really comfortable at what I do in the consultation part of it. Like, to me, that's where it all begins. The actual technique of tattooing is pretty simple. It's just like if you need to learn how to build a house, you hold a hammer this way, you put the nail here, snap, snap, snap. It's technique, The real side of it that's, I think, relating to what you're talking about is like the consultation once again. It's getting to know that person, talking to them, and giving them confidence in that you know what you're doing to set them, which usually actually helps my worries as well. Because in the beginning, the only real fears or problems that I have usually in the beginning is making sure that whatever they're asking for is translating as the image that they want on their body. So if that's it in a nutshell. I mean, that's the hardest part for me. So if it's like somebody comes in, they go, I went to the Congo to study gorillas, and I want to mark that period in time on me, but I also like frappuccinos. Like, those 2 concepts are not going to work, and I'm like, holy crap, what am I supposed to do? Is draw a gorilla sipping a frappuccino right now? Like, is that what you're asking for? Like, what are you going for? And that's the hardest part of it. My biggest fear, probably still to this day, is making sure that my clients like me. in all honesty. Like the actual like translation to paper to skin is totally different. And by the way, probably one of the things that makes me a little bit more unique than most artists is I'm known as what's called a freehand artist. So this puts panic in a lot of people. Generally nowadays, like whenever you go to get a tattoo, you walk in, you give somebody your idea, and you make your appointment. They're going to draw it, and then they're going to call you up, and then you come take a look at it, and you got time, right? Usually, I work really great under pressure at my job, not so much here. What I do generally is I draw directly on the person. I sit down with them, we have our consultation, I have their images, I have their thoughts, we work out everything, and then for me, it's easier to draw directly onto the body, which is where I usually get out all of my nervous energy, and because it allows me to just get lost in what I think it needs to do to translate to the body. And that's where it all begins. Sorry, but did it get, okay. One major one, I recently got, my son's 2 years old, almost this June. I got a whale for him. That's what this is about. I got to still get it finished and all that. Probably one of my most memorable tattoos right as of now. Probably second one that I can remember right off the top of my head. It's mainly because it was a really weird tattoo. It was a stick of butter with wings, known to be as a butterfly. Probably at the time that I tattooed my wife, one of the most intense moments I've ever had in tattooing, not only because you're causing pain to someone that you love. When my dog passed, Lobo, I had of 15 years, being devastated that I was and all that. She wanted a memorial tattoo of him, and probably one of the most memorable experiences I had because letting go of so much memory and all that. And we did a nice frame with like a picture of her actually standing with him at a lake. The last view that we actually got to have of him. So that's one that really sticks out in my head. As far as like for my clients, one that is really most memorable, I'll just show you one more piece of artwork that I did. This is a back piece that I created for one of my clients that might help relate directly to this question and to maybe the one before. This client of mine was way overweight at one point in time of her life and basically decided to make a change, which what directly relates to me again. And she decided to become like a runner and has now run like over 70 different marathons. To translate that to this tattoo is what this is a phoenix. Phoenix is usually about rebirth, like letting go of everything else and then burning yourself and then rising from the ashes. And this is probably one of my favorite pieces for that symbol of it. Her story telling me that and like how far she went, like I'd never heard of somebody doing that. And then when I met her and that's what she asked for, it was like, awesome, that's right. Beyond that she wanted it so large because it meant so much more to her. So does that relate? Okay, cool.
That's
Sorry. And that was freehand, yeah. That was drawn directly on. There's actually also as well, just to focus on the word permanent real quick, this tattoo has 3 tattoos underneath of it, first off. So it's not really that permanent, by the way, Like over time, basically, your body breaks down tattoos. And not only that, nowadays you can kind of get them lasered. So like as far as this work, just to go on this tangent really quick for as far as permanence and to relate it to something, almost all of my work that I do will be gone in 100 years. Everything that my life has like been about for this past 20 years, and I'm hoping for the next 50 or 60 years, it'll all be gone in like 100 years or so. And that's also what's cool about the way that I use ink as opposed to the way that other people have used ink in time. like, it's not, is it really that permanent? Like, it doesn't seem like it to me when, like, you know that there's so many people that have been around for so long with their artwork that is still around to this day. Like Da Vinci, his artwork still around, you know, and that was drawn 500 years ago, you know. This goes back to the point that I was talking about archiving with ink for time. This is a Franklin Lloyd Wright house. Like, all these things have been, Beethoven's sheet music, it's been around for forever. Woohoo, yeah. If I could just, you know, I'll wrap it up with 2 things really quick, just to hope that translate. I once heard a guy say to me 15 years ago, before I decided to freak out and move out west and be terrified, he said this statement to me. It's actually a quote from James Dean and Emerson combined. It's not the destination, but the journey. We can't change the winds, but we can trim our sails. I've pretty much lived my entire life saying this for the past 15 years, like almost every other day. It's been really amazing. And then I'm going to leave this, and I want to first say thank you all. I'm sorry it's a super awkward thing, but that's what I am. Like, everybody knows me as Awkward Mark, so, you know. I'm going to just leave you a little slight glimpse into what I was trying to convey in this whole message was basically, I'm looking to help you guys realize that, like, if you have a dream, if you have something that you desire, just go after it. Do whatever you can to make it happen. Take risks, take the challenges. If you feel comfortable with what you're doing, I mean, that's great, but I really can say that what's happened in my life is take that test, challenge yourself, and do it. I've been lucky enough to have ink in my life and let me experience traveling the world, meet my wife, meet awesome clients, and express somewhat my artwork. And I'm so fortunate for that. I'm so lucky. I'm going to turn on a video that my wife created of one of my biggest goals that I obtained, a biggest dream that I ever had in my life. So I hope you enjoy it. And thank you. Sorry.